welcome back everyone to episode 144 of the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damien here with David and Matt. Today we're going to go a little bit more into the Padres talk that we had this last week. The Tigers hired a GM, and then some teams that are already locked in have faced some really big injury concerns. But before we get to that, David, how have you done this week?
Well, it's, had a good week. Saturday less good, but a really good overall day for college football. And, got to watch the Cubs kind of get back in it a little bit. Last week they were, kind of down and out. It felt really bad, but they're back in the wild card right now. And, baseball-wise, playing the Braves right now, winning. So I'm pretty happy, enjoying it. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good. I enjoyed my my Sunday football wise. My Dolphins scored 70 points, so that was a lot of fun. But I think it's been a good week of baseball too. I've been watching a little bit, and the Braves are kind of cruise control, and it's these games don't really matter all that much. I mean, it sucks that they've had some injuries, so I've been kind of worried about that. And but yeah, we'll see what happens going forward this week. There's gonna be a lot of exciting baseball. I'm really excited to watch some of these games. There's two or three really big series going on that are going to determine wild card races, division races, and in fact one of them's like a head to head. So it should be a really entertaining week of baseball.
Well, Matt and I have had a great weekend of beating up on Colorado football teams.
Yeah.
Especially in the college football Saturday with Oregon versus Colorado. So that was a lot of fun this weekend. Really good set of games in general. Like, the Notre Dame Ohio State game was,
that was a good
electric too. And just overall, it was a really fun weekend there. It's kind of in the same boat with Matt. The Dodgers have already clinched. They've kind of been playing, but they kind of know their spot that they're locked into number 2. So I've kind of zoned out a little bit on just the day-to-day games from them. But overall, it's been a good week, and we do have some interesting topics to talk about here. And one of them we talked about last week, kind of, looking inside the dysfunction with the Padres and what was going to go on there and the story that was going to build from there. Well, Ken Rosenthal and Kevin Acee, who writes for one of the San Diego reporting outlets, they released an article, I believe it was Saturday, maybe it was Sunday, about kind of what this future looks like for the Padres. And it sounds like they're going to have some big payroll drops. I mean, they're about 250 or 249 or 250 million this year. Sounds like they want to drop down to about the 200 mark. And then also an interesting piece in there, which we kind of talked about a little bit last week, was that AJ Preller is not guaranteed to be back next year. So that was a little bit interesting. But David, what did you take away from that article?
Well, the article itself, brings up some really interesting points because they say they're going to slash payroll. It's worth noting that this is a team losing Blake Snell and Josh Hader at the end of the season to free agency. They've only got one more year on Juan Soto. They might try to capitalize on that, but what we've seen in recent years when it comes to those 1-year players like Francisco Lindor, Mookie Betts, the return isn't always like the same level that they traded away to get Juan Soto a couple of years ago. So, that that's going to be a topic and people are going to discuss it. But I think that there's going to be some other guys on the chopping block for the roster. This is a roster that, has a huge run differential, but ended up getting eliminated from the postseason a few days ago. So, officially a team that we were picking to win the NL West and to go to the World Series, they're officially not making the playoffs this year. So, the Padres are just a situation that is extremely strange. And, I think that this is a good thing, but, the Padres are just, this is a disaster from the beginning of the season, really. And we've been talking about them a lot. So.
Yeah, I agree. This to me is an indictment on the ownership for the Padres, and there's different ways to be a bad owner. You can be a you can be a notoriously cheap owner like the Orioles or A's ownership groups. You can be an overbearing owner that tries to control all the decisions like Jerry Jones in the NFL, or you could be a owner that doesn't seem to know what he wants to do and green lights your GM to sign these enormous ridiculous contracts and then says, oh yeah, well, now we're going to cut payroll. So I mean that the Padres set themselves up for a situation where they have to increase payroll from where they're at now in order to they got some huge contracts. I mean, and they already aren't deep enough. So I mean, they're going to lose Hader, and that'll be several million off the books. And I mean, there's a bunch of guys they signed this offseason too that, that they're paying some bad deals right now. They're paying Hosmer still. They're paying, I think are they still paying Will Myers a little bit? Or,
yes.
Yep. I don't know if they're still paying
through
him
next year.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's either through next year or through this season.
I think Cronenworth's a contract you might be able to get out of, which would make a lot of sense because, with Ha-Seong Kim and Xander Bogaerts up the middle, like Cronenworth's playing first base, and there's no reason for Cronenworth to be playing first base. Like he's not a good enough bat for that. You're taking away the value you get from his defensive, his good defensive stuff. So, to me, I've made my opinions pretty clear on AJ Preller that I've not been very fond of him for a while. But to me, I mean, the ownership's got to answer if they're going to, green light this huge payroll and all these gigantic contracts, and then they're going to cut it where, I mean, like I say, you're going to have to supplement this roster with talent. And I really don't think they're going to trade like Soto because, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, the only chance that you have to have a run in the next 10 years is for it to happen in the next 2 or 3 years because of these long-term contracts. And I mean, that's not the time to trade away a guy in Juan Soto who, you need him next year if you're going to compete. So, and you can't blow this roster up because the contracts are too bad. So, I mean, this is going to be a very difficult situation. The Padres are going to have a tough offseason. And to be totally honest, I think the Padres this year, they had some of these in-house issues that people have talked about, these clubhouse issues, whatever. I think part of it's just bad luck too. I mean, they went 0-12 in extra inning games. Like if they go 6-6 in those games, they're in the playoffs. I mean, it's there's some of it's bad luck involved and that kind of thing too. So I don't. If I were to pick next year, if the Padres make just a couple of we're gonna sign some re-sign Garrett Cooper to play first base and trade Cronenworth or something and sign some, average DA. Like I would probably pick them to be in the playoffs next year. Yeah. But it's just one of those things where they've had some bad luck and it seems like they're overblowing things a lot here to, with what's going on. But definitely some interesting stuff. It's going to be wild to see what happens with that team this offseason.
Yeah, Peter Seidler really he got the little brother syndrome from being in the same division as the Dodgers and thought that he was just going to go in there and spend all the money. And yeah, I mean, they got the one, they knocked him out of the playoffs last year. And he made it sound like, hey, we're big enough. We can compete with this market and all the time, like keep our payroll this high and do exactly what LA does. And I think he's learning that maybe we can't keep it at that high level. As much as we thought we could. They do have a good farm system, and maybe it is a little bit of the Preller, Preller agenda there. And if he gets out of there, but for a team having to drop $50 million in payroll, they have legitimate questions about what they're going to do this next season. Especially if they're losing Snell, you need multiple people in that rotation. You're not only losing Snell, you're losing Seth Lugo, who's been a really solid guy for you this year in your rotation. He's out of there. You re-signed Nick Martinez, which he's kind of been a swing man for you. You have Yu Darvish on the big contract, but Michael Wacha was on a 1-year deal. You almost have to rebuild this entire starting rotation outside of Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove. And it's and you're wanting to drop $50 million in payroll. I don't know where you're going to find that all the way.
Yeah, and I doubt that $50 million drop is all in one off season too. Like, but I tell you, one other little note on the Padres that I want to bring up before we move on is with this payroll drop. Um, remember that they're one of the teams that their TV deal got
Hmm.
screwed over
Yeah,
by the regional sports networks because it's them. I think the Guardians and the Diamondbacks maybe
I
that
think
have
it's
had
just the Diamondbacks and
Diamondbacks Padres.
Padres right now. Yeah, I don't think the
Okay,
Guardians are fully affected because I think they're still on Bally.
okay. So there's been like two, these couple of teams that have had these issues, and I don't know exactly. There might be some uncertainty about how much money that they're going to get out of their contract that was guaranteed to be paid. They might have been planning on that money coming in, and then they lose that money now. So um, we'll see what happens there. But that's another kind of wrench to throw into this.
Yeah, so two
One,
things. Will Myers'
go
contract
ahead.
is through this year.
Okay,
And also, as far as the money thing, I think MLB came out and said that they're going to cover up to 80% of what this year is supposed to get.
gotcha.
But then starting next year, I think it's unknown. So
Yeah.
that's something that the Padres are going to have to deal with this offseason.
Yeah, they'll be able to renegotiate for next year. So I'm
Yeah,
not too worried about that. But
I wonder if
for
they
this
find another
year,
home or if they
yeah,
just stay with MLB for some reason. But anyways,
yeah,
sorry, David, go ahead.
No, the one thing I was going to add was that one source of the money change could be on Bob Melvin. He definitely is. The report came out today, I think, that he has clashed a lot with like Josh Hader in terms of bullpen usage, where Hader doesn't like to be used more than one inning, and Melvin wanted to use him for multiple innings because he's his best bullpen pitcher, and that's definitely been a source of friction for this Padres team, which I think there's been more than just that, just because of
yeah,
the way they've lost a lot of these games have been, well, what if Josh Hader was on the mound for, that second inning and extra innings there? Maybe we would have won the game, but instead we give up the go-ahead run. So, it does seem like there's friction aside from just, you know, just from this, ownership to the players. There's a lot of internal strife going on that they're going to need to get cleaned up before they can go into competing next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump over to the Tigers. They hired Jeff Greenberg as their new GM. He will still be working under President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris, who got hired last year from, I believe it was the Giants. Greenberg is, if I'm correct, he's currently working in the Chicago Blackhawks front office, or was at that point. I don't know exactly which role he had there, but hiring a guy from a notorious franchise who hasn't been ran well the past few years to be your new GM from a different sport is a little bit out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. David can probably speak more to him because he's a Blackhawks fan and this guy I believe worked for the Cubs, right?
So yeah, I've got it pulled
Yeah,
up on what he did, but
yeah. So it's just I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's gonna create that. There's not gonna be that much put on this guy. Obviously Scott Harris is calling the shots here. I will say that Scott Harris needs all hands on deck in this franchise because they are not in a good situation right now. They do have some money to spend soon, but they obviously have not spent money wisely over the last couple years. I mean, the Javier Baez contract. There's a few outlier contracts like Strasburg and Corbin, and then Anthony Rendon. Like there's a few just insanely bad contracts. Javier Baez is just barely a step behind that, and it's really only because he's not paid quite as much money as those guys. Like that contract has been horrible, and and obviously that's not Scott Harris's fault, but he's the guy that's going to be tasked with coming out of this. Not to mention the Tigers are bad, and their farm system is just okay. I mean, they don't have the worst farm system in baseball, but it's not great. So you've got a bad major league team. You've got some bad contracts on the books, even though you do have a little bit of money to spend. You don't have a good farm system. They really need a lot of help here, and I think it's gonna be a tough few years still for the Tigers, even though there is a little bit of optimism about a couple of their younger players who are big leaguers like Torkelson and Riley Green, showing some signs this year. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. But you go ahead, David, because I know you probably have more to say on these guys than I do.
Not. I don't know so much about Jeff Greenberg, right? This is pretty clearly a Scott Harris, hire of a guy he liked working with back when he worked with the Cubs. Greenberg got up to being assistant general manager, and that was when Scott Harris was high up in the front office as of like 2020. But last year he got hired by the Blackhawks to be the associate GM, which that was just to kind of oversee a team tanking. There isn't really I don't think there's any referendums on Greenberg's skill, but transitioning between sports can't be an easy thing to do. So I assume he's more of a figurehead in terms of a GM here, where maybe he's a really good relations guy who can get in there and make the phone calls and be buddy buddy with the other GMs to try to get those relationships as good as possible, so that trades and stuff and discussions can be made easier. But ultimately, yeah, like Matt said, I think this is a Scott Harris hire. I think this is kind of Scott Harris's organization right now. And, the Tigers are, as we've mentioned, they're a very, very difficult team to pin down because you have young talent overlapping with, some of the lesser talented, kind of aging stars, former stars that are really in bad places. And the air around that organization has been really negative for a couple of years now. So I think it's going to take a while. I don't know that this hire has any major impact, but I think we'll see whether Greenberg's and Harris's kind of group, which is the same group that had helped getting the Cubs into to being a contending team in the late 2010s. This is that group. So I think they have a blueprint. I think they'll start working on it. Maybe there's definitely some options for them, but for now, I think we'll just keep our eye on some of these trade options and maybe whether the Tigers try to throw around a little money, because that is not a team that typically stands pat for a long time in free agency. We see them pop up and sign big players all the time. So, how long will they be quiet? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that relationship develops there. But let's go ahead and jump over to talking about some of the injuries that we've had happen this past week. And let's talk about probably the most injury-riddled team this year in the Tampa Bay Rays. We've went over how much they've lost from their starting rotation this year. And they've had some key injuries on from some of their players too this year. But this past week, they lost Brandon Lowe, Lowe, I don't know how he pronounces it. I think it's Lowe. Who was just kind of starting to find his swing again, to a fractured kneecap. So he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. And then Friday night, Randy Arozarena got pulled from the game with a quad injury. He's been day-to-day, has not played since then. But they did call up top prospect Junior Caminero, who I believe per Fangraphs was a top 10 prospect. He was 2 for 9 coming into tonight. I think he had another hit so far, but he'll kind of help fill in that infield role for now. But still, they've a couple bigger injuries there with Brandon Lowe, who's their starting second baseman. Then, of course, Randy Arozarena, who we've seen be playoff hero and WBC hero how many times already. Yeah. But how do you think this affects them, Matt?
It definitely affects them. Brandon Lowe is really good. That is Lowe. The Nathaniel Lowe used to play for the Rays, and I used to get them mixed up all the time because they pronounce their names different, even though they had the same name. But I do believe his is Lowe.
Not to be confused with his teammate Josh Lowe, who is Nathaniel's brother.
Yeah, it's super weird.
It's wild. But yeah, Brandon Lowe, fractured kneecap. That sounds like a painful injury. I don't like to hear that. I guess 4 to 6 weeks. If they made the World Series, he maybe could be a factor. I don't know. That would be difficult, but I guess it happened last week too. So looking at the calendar, if he made the World Series, then maybe. I imagine Randy is okay. They probably just tweak something a little bit, and they just are taking it easy with him because they kind of know where they're going to be in the playoff hunt. And then Junior Caminero is interesting. He was called up straight from Double A. He'd been really killing it at Double A this year, and he's only 19 years old. But this guy is a top 15 prospect in all of baseball. I think by every site. I think I saw one site has him as a top 5 prospect in baseball. So definitely an interesting guy. He's kind of the the I guess he's the heir apparent to what Wander Franco was for them, where they needed another guy to they need another superstar in that organization, assuming that the Wander Franco situation doesn't ever depending on how that goes. But this guy's another just potential top flight player for the Rays that they pulled out of their farm system, and hey, they got him from Cleveland too. I see. So, I don't even know who the trade was for that.
I'll look it
but
up real quick.
yeah, that might be an interesting one. That might be a Rays move. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does. But it just sucks for the Rays. Like you mentioned, they have had so many injuries. We already mentioned losing these two guys, and then losing Franco, even though that wasn't an injury thing. But Luke Raley, I think, is on the IL. Jose Siri's out, and then their pitching staff, they have the best rotation in baseball on the IL. Like McClanahan, Rasmussen, Springs, and there's one more that
Shane Boss.
Boz is on there's another one too that's on the IL from the rotation. Like,
wait, who'd you say?
I said McClanahan, Springs, Rasmussen, Shane Baz, and there's one more that I'm blanking on that was in their rotation that was performing really well, who's on the IL. But either way, very very unfortunate. We'll see how it affects them. But as long as Randy plays, I think as long as he plays a couple games this week, I'm not too worried about him actually being out. But Brandon Lau, that's going to hurt.
So those are the 4 right now. Glasnow was, but he's back, and Eflin was, but he's back. So there's that. And Junior Caminero was acquired from the Guardians in a 40-man roster crunch for pitcher Tobias Myers, who has not reached the major leagues and is currently with the Milwaukee Brewers now. And this year in Double-A had a 5.03 ERA and a 5.06 FIP. And he's 25 years old, so 30th ranked prospect in the Brewers organization.
Don't trade away these young DSL prospects for nothing. Don't do it. Just don't do it, Cleveland. Don't do it, anybody. Don't do it, Dodgers. The Dodgers have done it like 4 times, and it's like, what in the world?
At least they could say they're still good from it.
But it is worth noting that for every Junior Caminero, there's a guy you've never heard of who flamed out at age 21 in High A. So
right. I don't mind trading him for like a big leaguer, but trading him for somebody who can't make the big league roster that's on the 40-man that has to be moved off the 40. I don't know. I just you could have just gotten the guy for cash or something from the Rays. I mean, you didn't have to give up a player.
Yeah, so Caminero is...
Who's to say that Junior Caminero stays the same and keeps the same development path in Cleveland, too? So
probably not.
No.
But
yeah, he's 1 for 3 tonight, has a run and an RBI, but... but the super young guy can hit just all around. He's actually, I think, been graded as a pretty decent defender at third base this past year. I know there had been a lot of question marks, but he'd really stepped up this year. His defensive value. So it will be interesting to see where they play there, because you do have Paredes, who's been playing some third. I don't think you want to shift Caminero over to short or not, but he was supposed to get added to the 40-man this year anyways, this offseason. So it's just getting an early look at him ahead of time, which is incredibly rare that a 20-year-old has to get added to a 40-man roster crunch. But hey, here we are. Caminero's going to rake, though. I think he is. I think he'll rake a lot. So big losses for the Rays. But jumping over to the Braves, they've had a couple big losses that I don't think will quite hurt them into the playoffs, but they did lose top 2 in their rotation so far in Max Fried to a blister on his left index finger, and then Charlie Morton had to leave his start the other day with a right index finger sprain or inflammation. There's been kind of conflicting stories from that, but he's also on the IL. So they lose two starting rotation members, but they should be back by the playoffs. That's correct, Matt?
No, Freed
Oh,
should. Charlie Morton is not back for the NLDS.
interesting.
Yeah, so Max Freed, he actually had, like, they called it a hot spot where they thought a blister might be forming and gave him a couple extra days before his last start, and then he pitched all right, and then they said he has a blister and put him on the IL, but they're giving him they're giving him like 3 weeks to heal up from a blister. I think he'll be okay, unless he's Walker Bueller. And
Listen,
then and then but Charlie Morton's thing, that is very concerning because Charlie Morton has not been fantastic this year, but he's been steady as a number 3 pitcher, and he's not going to pitch in the NLDS. It sounds like he probably would be back for the CS, but you're looking at a huge drop off because of the injury to Kyle Wright this year and just a lack of quality depth in the rotation. None of the young guys really figured it out. You're looking at Bryce Elder as the 3 starter, and let me tell you, Bryce Elder is just not very good. I mean, he had a hot couple of months to start the season, but he's just not a very good pitcher, and his stuff's not very good. And if you don't have good stuff, you better throw strikes and not walk people. And he walks tons of guys, so I don't know if maybe give him having a couple of weeks, an extra week off between his last start of the regular season and then his playoff start could maybe he's have a little bit better control because he's worn down a little bit. But I definitely am concerned about the Braves rotation, and obviously with Freed too. Like, he will have gone 3 weeks. He might be a little bit rusty when he comes back. So hopefully Freed blister heals up and he'll be ready to start. I'm assuming they probably start him game 2 of the playoff series and Strider game 1 with him coming off the IL. But definitely a tough. That's definitely tough for the Braves. It really has hurt.
Yeah, we look back at the trade deadline, and neither the Dodgers nor the Braves were able to add in the starting rotation, whether it be depth or otherwise. And at this point, the Braves are feeling that loss of depth with the loss of Charlie Morton. I think Strider and Freed is still a good, 1-2, and you'll probably be able to get another start out of Strider and maybe also Freed in these longer series. If you were gonna
Yeah,
note
I was gonna
the
say
dates.
the way that when you mentioned that they will get 2 starts, assuming that Freed's blister heals up and he's healthy. They will get 2 starts out of both of them in the division series, assuming if it goes 5 games. The way the off days line up, you can start your game 1 starter in game 4 on regular rest, and your game 2 starter in game 5 on regular rest. So they would get starts from Freed and Strider twice if the series went 5 games. The concerning thing for me is that say you lose one of those first 2, with Strider and Freed pitching, you're relying on, in that huge game 3 swing game, you're relying on a guy who is just not very good. I mean, he might be a 5 starter in a good rotation typically,
Mm-hmm.
but when you have injuries, I mean, it happens. I mean, it's I remember Josh Tomlin started World Series games for the Cleveland, so it's like it's part of the game, but it's definitely unfortunate for the Braves especially. I mean, both these injuries happened after they clinched, so that really hurts too. As in, you've got to keep pitching them some, but it's just unfortunate all around.
I wonder if Alan Winans won't get some run. He looks like he's got a decent
I
fit.
trust
But
him. I trust him more than Bryce Elder right now, but I don't think that Bryce Elder's been in the big leagues all year, minus like the first week of the season before he got called up. So I imagine they'll go with Bryce Elder. I'll be shocked if they don't. Probably on a short leash, and it'll probably be more of a bullpen game, which helps in the postseason. That you can probably manage having more of a bullpen game there, but definitely a difficult situation pitching wise.
Elder's definitely a pitch to contact type of pitcher, and those just are, those are good for your rotation. In the regular season, those are the types of guys who go the whole year. They don't get injured. You need those types of pitchers on your team, but to start one of the world games in the playoffs, it's just unreliable, right? The other team might hit all those balls right at somebody, but it's a lot easier to predict strikeouts, and that's why you want these pitchers who get whiffs at a higher rate, much like Spencer Strider.
Yep. So one other thing, let's move over to let's save the Marlins and the Reds thing until we're talking about the wild card thing actually real quick. The want to mention that the Twins did get Chris Paddock back this week. Was a weird scenario where he was going to pitch in the game and then it got rain delayed and he never actually got to pitch. But it is a big get back for the Twins, who have already locked up their spot. They'll be in the wild card series. He's probably going to be out of the bullpen, but still, to get a guy back from Tommy John, who has been a solid pitcher before, it's a big get back for the Twins, real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I like I liked the Chris Paddock pickup when they got him, and we'll see what happens. Coming off of Tommy John surgery, we'll see if he's able to. We'll see if he's able to, be fully back immediately, because he could factor into their bullpen. And honestly, I like him as a bullpen arm with the fact that he's got that like really, really good changeup, and that pitch will be really difficult to see the first time around. So if he's able to have the feel for that immediately, you might see him as a bullpen arm, because the Twins are an interesting team. They got some good pitching. And they've got guys with track records in their lineup, but they just haven't performed that well this year. That's that could be a sneaky postseason like surprise team. To take down like a Texas or Houston or Baltimore or something. So I would definitely it's definitely interesting to see Chris Paddock, and I'm very glad he's back, because anytime somebody comes back from Tommy John surgery, that's very very good news. So.
Yeah, I like Chris Paddock. I've liked him for a while, and this is now 5 years removed from that really good 26-game stretch in 2019 as a rookie, where he put up a 3.33 ERA, kind of looked like a potential, future stud starting pitcher in the major leagues, and just has not been able to put it together, whether by injury or ineffectiveness. And we did laud this signing over a year ago, and it's been a while since Chris Paddock's been able to pitch, but he's finally back now, and hopefully the last couple of weeks of the season and maybe into the playoffs he can make an impact. I like his stuff, got a good changeup, but not a not a superstar level talent that's going to be throwing 99. We're hoping he can just get back to that 93, 94 he was sitting at before.
Yeah, and playing out of the bullpen might allow it a little bit extra for the playoff run at least. But so let's kind of look at the wild card, how it lays up right now, and we'll talk about the injuries that have happened kind of with those teams here. Let's go ahead and start in the National League side, where right now it looks like Philly is basically a lock to get in. They're 5 games up. And then you have Arizona and Chicago are tied for the last 2 spots, with Miami 1 game back behind them, and then Cincinnati 2.5 games back from them. Miami, it was confirmed this week that Sandy Alcantara will not be back. He tried to do a rehab start, was good in the rehab start, but then felt forearm tightness again after that. So he has been shut down for the year. So losing the reigning Cy Young Award winner for the Marlins, for down the stretch and into the playoffs, that hurts. And then the Reds at 2.5 back there as well, on the fringes of the wild card battle. They've shut down Matt McLain for the rest of the year, so they won't be getting him back either, who's had a really solid rookie season for them. I think I saw something the other day that like when they didn't have him in the lineup, they were under 500, and when they did, they were like 5 or 10 games above 500. So it's been a pretty big loss there for Matt McLain, and then Sandy Alcantara for the Marlins and the Reds.
Yeah, this is an interesting battle right now. First off, those injuries are bad. I didn't expect, when Sandy went down with forearm tightness, I didn't expect him to come back this year. And I know he kind of tried to, but he needs to rest it and not damage himself where he can't pitch next year. And then Matt McClain, that really sucks that he's out because he had a great rookie year, and I look forward to see what he does in the future. Although, and we could talk about the Reds, but they're you know they'd have to have a lot go right this week. They'd have to win all their games this week and have help to make it at this point, which they're kind of like the Orioles were last year, but they've been a fun team, and good for them on having a good season and maybe being able to finish above 500, which would be awesome considering where they were projected before the season. But then you got the wild card matchup in the National League is interesting. You've got the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, and the Marlins all separated by one game, and the Marlins have the tiebreaker over the Cubs. So if so that's really, I think that's really the battle, because I feel like the Diamondbacks with the 2-game advantage, I feel like they're probably going to be in, because they've really got. I know they're only 1 game up technically on the Marlins, but with the tiebreaker they're 2 games up. So because if a tie goes to the Diamondbacks, so I feel pretty good about them getting in. The interesting thing with the Cubs and the Marlins is that the Marlins' schedule this week is way weaker than the Cubs. The Cubs are a better team, but the Marlins are playing the Mets and the Pirates, whereas the Cubs are playing the Braves and the Brewers. So obviously, Game 1's gone pretty well for the Cubs tonight, but we'll see what happens. And it's interesting. And another factor too, like you talk about. I was talking earlier about the Braves and the Brewers have both clinched. They're locked into their spots pretty much. And, there's not a lot of urgency. There's a lot of, hey, let's get some rest for our guys type thing this week. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, in lineup cards over the last few days. But I could determine some of this. So it's going to be very interesting and very close.
Yeah, it's worrisome from the Cubs' perspective, but for the good news, at least on our side, and the bad news for the Marlins side, on top of the Sandy Alcantara injury, is that the Marlins game today versus the Mets got postponed till tomorrow.
Yep.
They'll be doing a double header. One of those games was one of the Sandy Alcantara expected starts, I think, because they are projecting for a bullpen game tomorrow, and then they have no off days the rest of the way. So going to be tough on the Marlins for sure, I think. If the Marlins get in at this point, they'll have deserved it, because this is a tough way to end, regardless of who you're playing, even if it is, just the Mets. It's, not exactly, it's not the way you're going to want to, have to go about things. They're going to have to use a lot of pitchers tomorrow. We'll see what they do. Diamondbacks the thing about the Diamondbacks is that they just came back from down 4-1 to the White Sox to lead 7-4. That's a team that we kind of penciled into the playoffs from early in the season, and they had a really big long slump in August to where it kind of looked like they were going to be out of it. And I don't know that I trust the Diamondbacks to get in here. Is the thing, even though, this is a team that has the tiebreaker over both the Cubs and the Marlins and has played really well lately to get themselves into the position they're in. This is a team without a whole lot of pitching. It's a team without a whole lot of, offense aside from Corbin Carroll and Christian Walker and I guess Ketel Marte, but they're reliant on a lot of guys who have been very streaky this season, and we've seen what happens when that kind of whole team goes cold and Corbin Carroll gets hurt, and he's back now and they're firing on all cylinders, but all it takes is one quick slump. So I don't know. I think I'm most worried about the Cubs, honestly. They got the Brewers and the Braves, and regardless of the urgency, that's a tough schedule, and they're performing good tonight, but that's a team that's struggled with rotation depth, just like we talked about the Braves and the Dodgers, and they got Justin Steele tonight, but I think Javier Assad's going to go this week. They're going to have Jordan Wicks pitching a game this week, and those are guys who are making their first full season in terms of starts. So it's going to come down to young guys performing in these clutch situations, and I think among these 4 teams, you're going to have 2 good deserving playoff teams, but it is going to be a bummer for the two that miss, and I'm hoping it's not the Cubs, but at this point, we're guaranteed a season over 500. Feels like a good season. I think all four of these teams are going to have a lot of positives to take away from this season, because it's going to be a crapshoot here down to the end.
Yeah, so actually looking at it, I think the Marlins have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, do they?
They went 4-2 against the Diamondbacks this year. So on the MLB.com postseason tiebreakers thing, it has the Marlins as having the advantage over the Phillies, Cubs, and the Diamondbacks, and the Reds, technically, because they tied the season series with the Reds apparently, but they have a 25-24 interdivision record, so they are technically hold it over them as well.
Wow.
So I actually think the Marlins have the tiebreaker over everyone they're really competing against for the wild card. So that might actually change what we've been talking about here. I was looking up to just so we could clarify it, but the Cubs don't have the advantage over anyone except the Giants. Or Padres, but those don't matter. And the Diamondbacks have it over the Giants, Padres, Cubs, but they don't have it against the Marlins, Phillies, and Reds. So, yeah, the Marlins actually hold the tiebreaker against everyone they're competing with. So maybe that's even more of an interesting thing about them. They could potentially get in if they're back the one game right now. But it is fascinating just looking at this at this NL wildcard race. I mean, you have four teams really that are in the thick of it, really three teams, because the Phillies have pretty much locked it in there. So this last week with the Arizona, Cubs, and Miami all fighting within one game of each other, and the way the tiebreakers could work there, it's going to be really fascinating heading down the stretch. But looking over and then in the division side on the National League, the Brewers should clinch tonight. So other than that, all divisions would be clinched in the National League. Looking at the AL East, it's still a 2.5 game lead for Baltimore over Tampa Bay. This is regarding or before whatever happens tonight as recording this of 9/26. Minnesota has already clinched. The AL West, Texas is up 2.5 games. Houston and Seattle, who are battling each other either for that division or for the wild card, have a head-to-head series. Houston won last night. So the way the wild card is looking is Tampa Bay is 9 games up. They're locked in. Toronto is 1.5 up. Houston currently holds that last wild card spot against Seattle. Like I said, they're 1.5 up on Seattle right now. Everyone else is eliminated, and Seattle and Houston have this 3-game series that they're playing right now. So if Houston wins the next 2, they're pretty much guaranteed to get in. But fascinating couple games here with the way that the wild card is kind of shaping up to be those last 2 teams facing head to head here in the last week.
Yeah, this American League West / wild card battle has been awesome. Seattle is playing against Houston, and it's just been last night's game was a lot of fun. The ballpark in Seattle was just electric, and Justin Verlander came in there and just shut it down. Like it was pretty crazy. And then they played the next 2 days, and pitching matchups over the next couple days favor the Mariners a little bit more, and so that'll be interesting. And then over the weekend, neither team, the Mariners nor the Astros, really get too much of a break, as the Astros go to Arizona and play the Diamondbacks, and the Mariners play the Rangers, who, if the Rangers clinch before the weekend, that could be beneficial because they could have like a hangover lineup too in one of those games. Whereas and the Diamondbacks, I guess, is kind of a similar thing where they could clinch being in the playoffs and rest their guys the last day of the season or something. So that could be a pretty big deal as to when those teams clinch. But definitely going to be interesting. And I don't know. These games are going to be so much fun over the weekend, or over the next 5 days, because I think anything could really happen in the AL West and in the wild card here.
Yeah, and the this Astros team being led by Kyle Tucker right now offensively, who is 1 home run and 1 stolen base away from 30-30 season. And it'll be, what, 4th, 5th one that we've even considered talking about this year. Like it's been a crazy offensive season overall, but just the fact that Kyle Tucker's having kind of a really, really excellent season, getting absolutely not talked about whatsoever. Just kind of goes to show you how crazy this division is. Want to point out like the Marcus Simeon's been really good for the Rangers, and he and Corey Seager up the middle are probably the best shortstop second base combo in baseball. And that's just a group that has really come alive. We'll talk about another guy who's really helped the Rangers get back in this race, because there for a minute it was looking like this was going to be Houston's division, running away. Mariners came from, I think, 10 games back. They might have been even further back.
Yeah.
And rose up and are even in the race here, and that's really special. Kind of behind, we've talked about Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh's been really good for them, but this race is going to come down to these games tonight, right? With the Mariners, and the Mariners are a team of stories and of destiny, and but if it's not, like do or die, the Mariners kind of tend to miss the playoffs by 1 game a lot. That's happened a number of times recently. I think 2017, 2019, both years it happened. So
these next 2 games are must win for the Mariners. Like absolutely must win. If they lose one of these next 2, I think they're done.
Yeah, the Mariners are on the outside looking in. We'll get playoff Blue Jays, which is cool. We'll get playoff Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. and Kevin Gausman up there, so that'll be good. I think we're pretty safe. It feels good.
Yeah.
The Mariners have to get to 87 wins to kick out the Blue Jays. I don't know. Yeah, I think their best bet is to just get ahead of the Astros.
Yeah, with their schedule, all 3 of those AL West teams, their schedule remaining, I don't think they'll pass the Blue Jays.
Yeah. So, this race is maybe the second closest one, I think, overall. You've got those 4 teams in the NL. You've got 3 teams fighting. This is why MLB did expand that wild card. And, I think that having these extra teams is it's maybe feels like a lot. And maybe, teams that aren't quite so good are getting in. But what's going to happen now is, in the next couple of years, we're going to get expansion. And then we're going to feel like, man, I just don't know. There's going to be so many teams fighting for the wild card. And every year, I think having these extra spots is going to enable these races in September baseball to kind of, take advantage of the excitement and the flux, and be something, that these fans can keep their hats on, because, when baseball really matters, man, it's fun.
Yeah. And it is worth noting why the AL West race is so important is because whatever team gets that clinches the number 2 seed in the American League, and they get the first round bye. So, and then they would have to face the winner of Minnesota, and then whoever that last team is, which it's going to be one of those division teams, either Houston or Seattle or Texas, will be that last wild card team. So you'll face the winner of that series, which I think any of the AL West kind of teams, I mean, obviously they played each other there, but that's why that race is so important for the division and the wild card there, is because you will clinch that bye through the first round of the playoffs there. So it will be interesting to see if Texas does, or whoever clinches that, Texas does really soon, if they do rest people, because they would have almost that week break. Which you've seen teams, I mean, the Braves and the Dodgers haven't really been resting people, because I think they're a little bit more afraid of just the longer layoff that's going to happen there with the way the schedule's all set up.
I think the Braves and Dodgers have been resting guys. They just haven't been resting them like every single day. Like they've just kind of giving guys time off. The Dodgers always give guys time off because they're such a platoon-based team, except for their 2 superstars who they've been giving a little bit of time off lately. But
yeah, I really think they missed like the first game after they clinched, and then they've been in the lineup every single day since. Yeah, at least for Mookie and Freddie. But it is going to be fascinating here with these next 2 games in Seattle, and then that weekend series for what it's actually going to look like, because it could affect the race there. But
And these division rivals don't want to, roll over for,
Yeah.
even if they're locked up. Like the Brewers
Yeah.
are not going to roll over for the Cubs. They would much rather see the Cubs sitting at home in October than,
I wonder if Texas clinches and then they're like, well, we don't want Houston in.
Yeah.
Exactly. Come out,
So
show up,
like,
get ready for the playoffs. Play them like the playoff games.
We'd much rather have Seattle in or
Yeah, so
something
we're
like
gonna
that.
tank against Seattle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess that's the
Anyways.
opposite. But anyway.
Yeah. So let's jump down to some of the other kind of miscellaneous things that we had. So we mentioned last week that Adam Wainwright got his 200th win in that 7-inning shutout performance. Well, Ollie Marmol, the Cardinals manager, came out today and said that will be the last time that Adam Wainwright pitches in his career. Wainwright had already said that this would be his last season. So Adam Wainwright now retires at 200 wins, a 3.53 ERA, a 3.54 FIP, 47.6 WAR per Fangraphs, over 2,600 innings pitched. Just a fabulous career here, but that will end his pitching side. He did leave open the opportunity that Wainwright could potentially hit in one of the games if the Reds are out of the playoffs run, out of the playoff race. There would be potential that Wainwright might DH for a game, which would be pretty interesting.
Cool.
Get him the standing O, yeah.
Yeah, he's had a fun. He's been a fun back when pitchers hit. He always was a guy that was fun to watch hit because he actually was. I mean, for a pitcher, he was pretty decent at it. He hit some home runs in his career, so that'd be pretty cool. And he's going to be a really good TV analyst too. I know he did that for the playoffs a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he decides to go that route, I think he'll be a really good TV analyst. He was really good when he did the playoff one, but yeah, that's pretty cool. It's good to see. Good to see them let him walk out on a good note of what's been a horrible year and finish on a high note. So,
yeah, I think he's already signed for Fox, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think he signed a contract, kind of like Tom Brady did.
Yeah,
for whenever he retires.
Figured he probably did.
So another guy we had retire is Sean Doolittle, left-handed reliever. Had 112 saves on his career. 450 innings pitched, a 3.20 ERA, 2.95 FIP. Relievers don't get much WAR, but 11.4 WAR here. Had a really solid career, was a real dominant lefty for some of those years in Oakland, and then a part of some of those Washington teams, was a part of the World Series team in Washington, and kind of bounced around here and there lately, but really good career. And Doolittle was always kind of one of the more funny, quirky type people out there, but he calls it a career now too.
Yeah, Doolittle had a couple of really awesome years in there. They had a 2018 Nationals, had a 1.60 ERA and almost 2 WAR, which is an awesome reliever year. 2014 Oakland I believe that was a playoff team. Had a 2.73 ERA in 62 innings, 22 saves. He's a pretty underrated reliever, a really solid lefty reliever. And he was always fun to watch. So congrats to Sean Doolittle. He got his 10 years in the big leagues. So very cool to see him, be able to celebrate a great career. So
Sean Doolittle's a good dude. Won't be a Hall of Famer. I like to think about the Hall of Fame a lot with these retiring guys. But Doolittle's one of those guys that's going to go down as somebody you remember not just for his baseball, but he's a good dude off the field. And the beard, obviously.
So the last guy, which we'll probably talk more about this at some point in the offseason, just to give it more of a true send-off of what the career should be. But Miguel Cabrera starting his last homestand of his career, I believe it was tonight in Detroit. Just looking back at the career he's had, was a rookie in 2003 with Marlins. In 2008, got traded to Detroit. He's been there ever since. He's a 2-time MVP, 12-time All-Star. He won the Triple Crown, 7-time Silver Slugger, 4-time batting champ. Has 510 homers, a 306 average, 382 on base, 518 slugging, a career 139 WRC plus, and he's at 67.4 WAR, but he was well over 70. But the last few years in a negative WAR basically since 2017. I guess he had 1.2 WAR there in 2018 and 2020 combined there, but negative outside that. But a definite Hall of Famer if David's. We're talking about that here.
Yeah,
I mean, I will. He is 500 home runs. He's gonna get in. At this point, I think we're not gonna see a whole lot of guys get to 500 home runs. Going forward with just the way the pitching is and longevity of careers and stuff, it's gonna, the best players are gonna get there, and those are the ones you're gonna see that are deserving. Miguel Cabrera with the Marlins, World Series champ as a rookie, made it to the World Series a couple more times with Detroit. Didn't get it either time, but ultimately, won the Triple Crown. This is a guy who had, both peak and longevity, signed one of those really big long-term extensions with Detroit. One of the, when I was talking earlier about them being willing to throw money around, this is one of the, players that they did it with. And unfortunately, the back end of this contract has looked kind of bad. He has really lost his power. I can't help but wonder if, some of that's been playing in Detroit, but good career for Miguel Cabrera. Hopefully he can, finish it off, and, we'll celebrate him again, this offseason when we start talking about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely great career for him. In 2013, just looking at his numbers, 2013 Miguel Cabrera was absolutely insane. He had a 348 average, 440 on base, a 534 slugging. Sorry, that was wrong. Sorry, 348 average, 442 on base, 636 slugging in 2013, and 44 home runs in a year that, that was kind of before all the juiced ball and all that stuff. Like that, home runs were hard to hit. I think he led the league with 44 that year, and 193 WRC plus that season. It's just, that is just unbelievable numbers. But definitely a great career for him. I'm look forward to talking about him a little bit more here in the off season, and hopefully he gets a really nice send off by the Detroit fans this weekend.
Yeah, I saw the starts of it tonight, and it did look like it's going to be shaping up to be a really good week here in Detroit for the final send off for Miggy. But let's go ahead and jump over to players of the week so we can go ahead and wrap this show up. So David, who do you got for your player this week?
With a pitcher who got his second best start of the season this week by game score. I'm going with Garrett Cole, and I want to take the moment to note game score is like it compiles everything that happened in the game in terms of walks, strikeouts, innings pitched, kind of puts it on a sliding scale that looks kind of like a typical school grade, but maybe a little more like 50 is average, and then 60 is above average. Garrett Cole's start this week was a 90 game score. He threw eight innings of 2-hit ball against the playoff bound Toronto Blue Jays. Gave up just 1 run, struck out 9. It was good for a game score of 90. I want to bring up Garrett Cole because we are going to start looking at awards here coming up probably next week, and you're going to be hard pressed to find someone better suited for the AL Cy Young Award than Garrett Cole. You'll find some equals, I think, guys like Sonny Gray and Kevin Gausman, but Garrett Cole's been able to kind of equal them and even have a better ERA with 200 innings pitched, which I think is absolutely massive. We only seeing 3 guys get to 200 innings pitched right now, and we might only see a couple more by the end of the season. So that threshold is becoming more and more valuable, getting more innings out of your starting pitchers. And I think Garrett Cole being able to throw 8 innings this week of 2-hit ball, what is his second best start of the season, kind of exemplifies what he's kind of building towards. And if you take a glance at Baseball Reference wins above replacement, Garrett Cole's got the Major League Baseball lead in wins above replacement for starting pitchers, and it's clear by like a half a win or something. So he's looking really good, looking like a Cy Young Award winner, and he's my player of the week. Matt, who you got?
So my player of the week, I'm going with John Birdie from the Miami Marlins, former stolen base leader in the National League one year. John Birdie. He hit 3 home runs this week, which is not a John Birdie thing to do. He also hit 500 with a 579 on base and a 1.125 slugging percentage. And this was a week that the Marlins absolutely had to have it. Like, they had to have John Birdie do this week to stay in the playoff hunt. And it feels a little bit like that 2020 season where these guys like John Birdie just kind of come out of nowhere and somehow put up like the best week of their careers and keep them alive in the playoff hunt. Like it's been crazy for the Marlins, but they're still alive, and John Purdy's been a big part of that. And Luis Arias missed a couple games, and they had to pick up the slack somehow, and it's been really cool to see for him.
Yeah, John Birdie's a really kind of fun player when he's on top of his game and doing what he could do. He's just running all over the field, but you don't ever expect him to really have like a 3-homer week there. But hey, you need players to step up when you need them most. John Birdie did that this week. The guy that I went with this week is rookie Evan Carter from the Texas Rangers. He is Fangraph's 30th overall ranked prospect. The Rangers called him up when they were kind of struggling a little bit, and he might be one of the catalysts to saving their season here. In 17 games, 4 homers, 13 runs, 10 RBIs, batted .326, a 194 WRC plus, a full win above replacement already in 17 games. This week alone, had 3 homers. One of them was a big 2-homer day to put them ahead. Had 7 RBIs there, a 389 average, 450 on base, a 1,000 slugging this week, a 282 WRC plus, 0.6 of that 1 WAR I was already saying. Evan Carter's been phenomenal for the Rangers this year. The outfield we said was a little bit of a weakness for him. We knew they had some prospects. I don't think we expected Evan Carter to kind of be up this year, but they called him up, and he's probably really helped save their season. I mean, obviously they have Seager and they have Simeon. Jonah Heim's back now, but he's really gave them a jolt here as they were kind of just starting to struggle, and now we've just talked about took a 2.5 game lead in this division. So Evan Carter is my player this week.
He's been huge, and I believe he's 21 years old. So
prospect too.
Yeah. They've been allowing him. They've been allowing him to go out there and mash, and he got a 194 WRC plus so far. Really proving why playing the young guys is a good plan sometimes, and giving them regular plate appearances. He's up to 17 games played, 56 plate appearances. They're not hiding him from major league pitching, and he's coming out and excelling. So that's very good.
Yeah. Oh, one thing that I forgot because it happened today and I did not put it on here is that, and we'll have to talk more about this probably in the offseason too, since we're already running a little bit long, but today Hall of Famer Brooks Robinson passed away.
I didn't see that.
He was a former MVP, 2-time World Series winner, 18-time All-Star, 16-time Gold Glove winner, played his entire career, 23 years with the Baltimore Orioles, amassed a 267 average, 322 on base, a 401 slugging, 268 career homers, but was just gifted defensively. Like I said, 16 Gold Gloves, one of the best third base defenders of all time, if not the best. He was 86 years old. So I know we were running a little bit long, but I forgot to put that in there. But if you guys have any thoughts, go ahead.
Yeah, that's sad to hear. He was obviously one of the greatest baseball players ever, and a true Hall of Famer and an icon for the Orioles. That there's only a couple guys for the Orioles that are as iconic as he is, and definitely a great baseball career, great life. 86 years old. I hate to hear it, and thoughts are all out there with his family and with the whole Orioles organization, and hopefully maybe the Orioles will rally around it a little bit and win it for Brooks. That would be pretty cool.
My condolences. I do have one update. Chris Paddock's in the game for the Twins. His fastball velocities this inning: 99, 98, 97, 97, wow. 96, 96.
Like I said, playing out of the bullpen will help.
There you go.
I will help there. Well, thanks, David, for putting that in there so we don't end on such a somber note here with Brooks Robinson. But like I said, we will, in the offseason here, when we get some time, we'll have to talk more about this Miggy Cabrera send-off and then about Brooks Robinson as well, because we didn't really kind of give him his due here at the end of the show. But thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Or you got something?
I was going to add one note. we didn't mention earlier, Ronald Acuna did get his 40th and just hit his 41st home run.
Oh,
So he's got the 40-40 season, the fifth ever, and the first ever 40-60, 40-70. We don't know what it'll end up being, but
it is the first ever 40-60, and he's 2 steals away from 40-70.
Yeah.
So that one. Oh, awesome. The schedule for the podcast, if you guys are listening to this, is going to be extremely weird with the playoffs here. We will do our best to keep you up to date on it all, but look for the episode next Monday night or Tuesday morning. We'll be recording a date earlier next week because the wild card starts on Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. Next week, we'll give you more information about what the rest of the schedule is going to look like for the playoffs here. But thank you guys for tuning into this episode of the Batflip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys back next week.